Greetings from Columbia Business School Executive Education. I'm Christine Tom, and I'm here today with Dr. Trish Gorman for today's webinar, Women in Leadership, Shifting Your Mindset for Extraordinary Performance. Before I introduce Trish, I'd like to go over a few quick logistics. As you'll see on the next screen, a recording of this webinar will be sent to you. If you'd like to tweet about this webinar, please do so at #ColumbiaExecEd. And finally, most importantly, please submit your questions using the Q&A box. Trish and I will get to as many of those as possible in the last 10 minutes. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Trish Gorman. She is the faculty co-director of our newly revamped Women Leadership Program taking place this fall. She works with a multitude of corporate audiences on topics related to strategic leadership, growth, and innovation. Her past roles include Director of Global Strategic Learning at McKinsey & Company and Dean of the Jack Welch Management Institute. Trish has published in the McKinsey Quarterly, Harvard Business Review, Forbes.com, and Deloitte Review, and co-authored What I Didn't Learn in Business School with Jay Barney. Trish earned her PhD in Strategy and Economics from Case Western Reserve University and her MBA, which focused on strategy and operations from the Anderson Graduate School of Management at UCLA. Trish, it's always great to be with you. I'm going to leave the stage and rejoin you in the last 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Christine, and thanks to everyone who made this session possible. I'm really pleased to be here today and to be talking to you about something so important, your own leadership goals. And it will be quite helpful during this short webinar if you think of what some of those goals might be. Perhaps you're looking into your own next promotion. Maybe there's a key client relationship that you'd like to strengthen, or a new product you're trying to launch. The goals you have, you're probably pursuing by trying to perform, being on time and on budget, using your best strategic thinking skills, data analysis, and communications. And that's tremendous. In fact, we spend a lot of time at Columbia Exec Ed and elsewhere ensuring that every leader is continuously building these important skills. But unfortunately, performing is not enough to truly unlock your full leadership potential and reach all your goals. It takes more. And you may be frustrated because you're performing so well and you can see yourself getting better every week and every month and every year, but you might not be getting recognized as being the leader that you really know you can be. Part of that is the perception of others. Leadership is a conferred status, and the co-director of our Women in Leadership program, Malia Mason, has really pushed our thinking about what it takes to demonstrate the legitimacy, the value you bring, and gain the respect it takes to be perceived as a leader. That will take you closer to your goals. But what I'm going to talk about today is the third leg of the stool, and that is your perspective. The perspective you take on the world around you, the way you shift your thinking and your energy, is what will really drive you to full achievement of your potential as a leader. What do I mean by perspective? Well, it's switching the way you see the world and then being able to nimbly change back to another perspective. So have a look at the pictures I've selected here. Shifting the way you think about yourself and your situation can help you achieve key goals. It can also help you inspire others and be a true leader as you seek to create value for yourself and for your organization. As you look at these pictures, they are not what they seem to be. They each have multiple ways of being seen. And I'm going to argue that you have choices about the lens you take to look at the world around you. And those choices change your ability to achieve your goals, inspire others, and create value. There are 7 key mindset shifts for a leader. But I'm going to take my top 3 today and really emphasize those. Those are shifting from a me to a we mindset, from a through to a with mindset, and from a defensive to an offensive mindset. Now, some of these you might be thinking, okay, I get that. I've seen this before. And I hope you have. I really do. Because these mindset shifts are something that you can be introduced to, you can practice, and you can get so much more skilled at situationally understanding and intuiting when and how to make this shift so that it's useful to you. What do I mean? Well, let's first take defensive and offensive. We're all quite familiar with these concepts. When you're on the defensive, you're trying to protect something. You're actually trying to preserve the status quo. If you play defense well and do your job well, the score doesn't change. It's reactive. You're defensive against an opponent, and you need to be strong. These are all terrific characteristics. But to really achieve your true leadership potential, I'm going to tell you from many of the women I've worked with and the research we do that you need to be spending more time on the offensive, actually making a difference, driving to a goal, selecting a target, being more opportunistic and more nimble. Okay. It's a shift, and I would hope that if you think about it right now, think of going into a meeting and feeling like you have to defend your idea, feeling like you have to defend yourself, maybe even feeling like you have to defend your right to be at that meeting and have a voice at the table. Now think about if you are running with an idea, if you're embracing the situation, if you're opportunistically going in with positive energy, trying to drive towards something and not worrying as much about the defensive protective side of yourself, but the opportunistic power that you bring. Now, how does this help you as a leader? Well, I'm going to give you 5 ways that this offensive mindset enhances your effectiveness. First of all, it gives you this action orientation with a goal focus. You're going to change the score. You're going to change the situation. It also helps you unify your team because you can all choose a target and work together towards that target, collaborating in ways that enable you to use the strengths of the whole team. When you're playing to win rather than playing not to lose, it does change the energy, it changes the focus, and it changes the tenor of your team. It encourages you and your team to intentionally take risks. And without risk, we don't have rewards. So moving from the defensive, where you're back on your heels, to the offensive, where you're actively seeking opportunities, also models to your team positive laser focus on value creation and value capture. You may be an excellent defensive player, but you will probably see more leadership opportunities when you start to exercise your ability to move towards a goal with great energy, bringing your team along with you. I'm going to move on to another mindset shift. This one is probably very familiar to you. It's moving from the me to the we. Now, when you are working on yourself, and all of us need to, you need to be self-sufficient, autonomous, independent. You need to take ownership for your own role and your own goals, and responsibility for the obligations you take on. You're somewhat of an expert, a soloist in many ways. Making the shift to being more of a leader is other-centered. It's about we, all of us. Instead of taking ownership so much, you're giving opportunities. And it may even be that you're giving opportunities that you might prefer to keep for yourself. You're more of a conductor of an orchestra, making sure everyone is playing their best, but also contributing to a unified sound, to a collective effort. It might mean you're stepping back. It depends how you think about yourself and whether this is your natural state or whether you actually have to be intentional about toning down your ego and making room for others. Now, how does this help you as a leader? Well, to some extent, it's obvious, but it also might be that you're not even unlocking all the potential of what it means to shift to the we mindset. Are you really making that we a big enough group, a diverse enough group, and a group of people who are so talented and so amazing that sometimes you just feel fortunate to be working with them. I have my colleague, Jack Walsh, to thank for the term more brains in the game. You might be pretty intelligent, and especially in your area and in your industry, but getting more brains in the game, more perspectives, more people, more expertise does increase your chances of not only solving some of your key problems, but solving them more efficiently, more quickly. We know that creativity spikes when we bring diverse teams together. So embracing the we that is a more diverse team can also bring you not just better solutions, but different solutions and more creative and innovative ways to solve problems that might be more valuable, especially in a highly competitive environment. You empower your team when you truly embrace the we mindset, not just with your words, but with your actions. When you care that others are really having the opportunity to fulfill their own potential and leverage their skills. And often these are complementary skills. You have some weaknesses, we all do. But if we can bring together a group where we compensate for one another's weaknesses, that allows us to show our strengths. And at the same time, having a we mindset means you have some empathy about the challenges and the obstacles that your team is facing. When we have the me mindset, we want our team to succeed, and we might be driving towards a goal. But being able to really embrace the fact that we are all in this work together, and at various times we all may shine or we all may need more support, can make you the kind of leader that others trust and really want to work with. The third and last mindset I'll talk about today might not be as familiar. I call it through versus with. What does it mean to have a through mindset? Well, you're persevering. You're trying to get through the current situation. In my work around the world with various companies and organizations and leaders, I often heard that people were trying to get through an economic downturn, through a current political situation, through a bad quarter. When I talk to individual women leaders, sometimes they're trying to get, if we can just get through this time when maybe you're working for a bad boss. It does take perseverance. It takes patience. And it can make you feel battle tested when you get through a tough situation. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Much of our socialization emphasizes that we need to persevere and put up with things. I'd like you to shift your mindset and think about, instead of saying, I want to get through this, I can't wait till it's over and we're on the other side of it, to embrace with. With means we're living with a bad boss. We're living with an economic challenge. It takes persistence, which is slightly different than perseverance. It's saying, I understand that the context I'm in is challenging, and I can deal with that. I actually want to embrace it. This experience will make me stronger, but I'm in the moment. So you may have already embraced the idea that you need to accept the situation you're in. This doesn't mean you're lazy or a slacker or you're not trying to make positive change. In all these cases, you can be both defensive when it's situationally appropriate and offensive. You can embrace the me and the we. You're going to have to get through some situations, and in other times, I'd like you to think more about how you might take what you're dealing with and move it from being a challenge to being an opportunity. Move it from being a bug to a feature, as some of our coding friends would say. How does this help you as a leader? Well, again, I'll give you 5 ways. When you move to a with mindset, it redirects energy from this future speculation about what will happen when you get through this situation to present action. It resets the parameters of your current situation. And it shifts your team out of park or idle into drive. You're no longer idling, waiting, you're ready to move. And maybe you're moving into drive, maybe you're moving into reverse. It's taking the situation as it is and deciding, what can I do with it now? It encourages quite a bit of creative problem solving. And often it can generate a real competitive edge or innovation, because while others might be waiting to get through the situation, you're working with it as it is. And I bring this mindset shift into my top 3 now because of the current public health pandemic that we're dealing with, the supply chain issues and the talent issues that so many of us are trying to get through. I really encourage you, instead of thinking about getting through it, thinking about what you can do with it and how you can mobilize your team to see the world differently, to shift your mindset and make more of the situation you have. I have a lot of confidence in you. I work with amazingly talented people, and I often find that they aren't even aware of how much they impact others and how much potential they have to bring positive change to others. So perhaps the me versus we might not be resonating because you might already be very much embracing the fact that you're in a collective social situation every time you approach your work. But I would encourage you to think about moving from the defensive to the offensive. Try it in a meeting you go to later today. Try it in the way you frame an email or the way you communicate with your team. And then really try to think about shifting your perspective from through to with. And this is just part of the puzzle. You still need to perform. You still need to communicate well, think strategically, analyze your data, and fulfill many of the other day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month challenges we all have. And you'll be building your skills throughout your entire career. And don't forget, it's also about how people perceive you. You need to be seen as legitimate, valued, and respected so that you can truly unlock your full leadership potential. We, of course, have many other programs at Columbia Exec Ed that delve into these topics more. But I believe you can take what we've talked about here and make a difference immediately. I know you have some questions, and perhaps now's a good time for us to switch over to questions, Christine, and see if we can shed some light on some individual situations.
Thank you, Trish. We had great questions coming in during the webinar. So let's get that kicked off and we'll answer as many of those as possible in the next 10 minutes or so. Let's start with Lisa. She's asking, how can we as women shift to a mindset of promoting ourselves as opposed to being humble?
Well, Lisa, thanks for that question. And it really is difficult because sometimes we try to be humble and we hope that people will recognize our performance for what it is. But we really do have to make sure what we do is visible and valued. Often one way to do that is to emphasize teamwork more. Shine the light on your team and your organization will realize that that team was led, motivated, and inspired by you. You also might take some more specific tactics to think about what is the currency in your organization? What do they value? And how can you make it more clear that you're contributing without violating maybe your personality and your desire to not be seen as tooting your own horn too much?
Thank you so much, Trish. A question just came in from Mindy, and she's asking, do you have any tips for women in leadership roles on how they can shift the mindset of a risk-averse culture that stems from top down?
That's a big challenge, but it is also a very common challenge, especially when times get tough. Many top leaders do shift to being risk-averse and very conservative. Part of it is to take small bets and to think about options, to think about what kind of small things you can do that are appropriate risk, small risk, but can be almost framed as experiments. That if you try something in a small group, right now, lots of organizations are trying different work from home arrangements, for example, trying them out. When they work, doubling down. If they don't work, there hasn't been a big investment. There hasn't been a lot of reputation or financial or other risk. And so these kinds of initiatives are more palatable to a top leadership group that maybe overall very conservative. And I'd encourage you to look at the work of my wonderful colleague, Rita McGrath, who's another Columbia Exec Ed faculty, who does a lot of work on how to frame options so that even in a very conservative, risk-averse environment, you can make those little openings for innovations, for new value, and for the projects that you really believe in and care about. Thanks, Mindy.
Thank you. Next question is from Shirley. Can you provide a few life examples on how to implement these approaches?
Certainly I can, and I think if you look around you, you'll see them. Once I started to work in this area of mindset shifts, it at first was a little awkward, where I'd say, I want to shift from me to we. So I'm going to go through my last team report and take out every time I said I and shift it to we, or put in the names of team members and make some actual positive changes. There was a part of me, I must admit, that felt that it was risky, career risky, that I might actually make some very talented people on my team look so good that they would eclipse me. But that's, I'm being honest with you about the real ways of applying some of these. Moving from the through to the with was vital for me, because there were so many times where I was working with challenges in my career or my industry, working with others in the same way. And we would catch ourselves just kind of hoping and waiting for this to be over, get through it. But hope is not a strategy. And if you really consider yourself a strategist, you need to move to that with mindset. Thanks for asking such an interesting question.
A question came in from Arati. How do these mindset shifts differ from men to women?
That is fantastic. Thank you for bringing in that perspective. We do find that women tend to be on the defensive more, and it is unclear yet from academic research the true reason why. From our own lived experience, we might think we're on the defensive because we are sometimes in an adversarial relationship, or we feel we have to fight to get our voices heard. But whatever the reason, if you just observed a group of men and women leaders in similar situations, you would see the women exhibiting more defensive behaviors, which is why I really draw it out and say intentionally, you want to shift to the offense. You want to start to think about moving forward with the goal. Imagine they've given you the ball to run with, even if they haven't. Go out and try to get it and take off. So there is a gender bias in that sense. In the me to the we, women actually tend to be more collective and more communal in it as a general rule. But women who are ambitious about advancing themselves in leadership sometimes try to act more like the successful figures they see around them, who are often men. So they may feel they need to be a little more autonomous, independent, show that they're not going to be just a member of the team. They need to stand out. So that there's a delicate dance between what women as a population do, what feminine characteristics are in the workplace, and how successful leaders act. When it comes to through and with, I don't have any data to go on there. I definitely have those seen talented women shift a whole conversation, shift a whole board meeting by saying, why are we waiting? Let's seize the moment now and think about what we can do with this challenge we've had to encounter. So I definitely know it can be done. And I've often seen, and I hope there are some men listening to this session as well, each of these mindset shifts and these leadership effectiveness techniques can be used by anyone.
Thank you so much, Trish. We received a question from Deborah. What can companies do better to hire, retain, and promote women at the mid-career point and beyond?
I'd like to, first of all, thank you for that question. What companies can do to hire, retain, and advance women at the mid-career point and beyond is, I believe, to be more realistic about the challenges that women face inside and outside the workforce. By your mid-career point, you've obviously demonstrated your skill set, but you've also had your share of resistance and challenges. And there's probably a reason that you may not feel that you can achieve what you want to in a given culture of a company. So I think companies that are serious about mid-career women need to not just talk about having great cultures, but actually demonstrate they do. And many companies are coming around to this, and the world is changing rapidly in this area. But the ability to draw out the strengths of women. I myself had a family, and have a family. But when my family was younger and I was at my mid-career point, it was very difficult to feel that I could do a great job in the workplace and in home and in my community. And many of us have passions that we care about that are outside of our work, outside of our family, and that we need to make room for. So I don't have organizational advice beyond the idea that it would take sort of embracing that we mindset and really understanding the challenges and the obstacles of others, putting yourself in the other's position, and really listening to what the needs are of the population you care about, so that you can tailor the environment to be more suitable, more amenable, and more productive.
Thanks, Trish. We received a question from Simita. She's asking, how do you approach your team with the new idea without sounding bossy and pushy? Sometimes an assertive person can seem that way.
There are two answers to that question. One is there's an argument that is, if you're bossy, you're assertive, that's your personality, that's who you are, that's how you come across, you do you. There's another, and I think you're realizing that it might be more helpful in certain situations to temper that part of yourself and find other ways. It could be to broaden the ways you communicate, to communicate both symbolically as well as verbally and in written form. Because the recipient may react to you when you talk in a way that seems aggressive. And again, this is common for women, but there are many cultures where communication methods, if you then move towards symbolic and written communication, your message may come across without that overlayment of the emotional tone. So it may be experimenting with things like that. And it may also mean that you continue to develop your own repertoire. So without being inauthentic, you can channel more of a listening delivery, where you're almost in an interrogation about how much they want to hear about the idea, versus a delivery that is more assertive and more direct.
Thanks, Trish. So Shireen is asking, what are the worst mistakes common to women in leadership positions and their mindset solutions?
The worst mistakes that I see women making in leadership is believing that is giving up, is being happy with second place, being grateful for being in the room and not thinking about why am I not at the head of the table. Being satisfied with what they're given instead of really questioning what they're worth. And that is a little bit about being a little more on the defensive stand. And then there may be perfectly times when you say, actually, Trish, you don't know me. Just me getting into this room is a small miracle. Well, then good for you. And that this doesn't apply to you. But I do see some women almost putting a cap on their own ambition. And I think that's the biggest mistake, because it just means so much talent is not expressed. So many customers aren't delighted. So many products aren't introduced. So many innovations don't get to market. And I just believe there's so much more that if we didn't make the mistake of thinking that where we are is as far as we can go.
Thank you so much, Trish. And we're at time, but I'd like to ask one key question that we always ask everyone when we host our webinars. what can we do today to make a shift in our mindset and improve performance?
Well, I would say, given the particulars of the pandemic, the supply chain, and the talent issues that probably all of us are facing in some way or another, work from home uncertainty or issues with your children or your team, that I would say everyone just try not to think about how we get through this, and think about working with the challenges and opportunities we have now and with each other to make a positive difference now. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you so much for your presentation and for being with us today. We're looking forward to your upcoming program, Women in Leadership. Be on the lookout for more information about this program in your email. And on behalf of Columbia Business School Executive Education, we'd like to thank you for joining us today at the very center of business. Have a great day.